Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to welcome everybody to our special City Council meeting.
Mayor Artis.
Here.
Councilmember Ali.
Here.
Councilmember Sear.
Here.
Councilmember Grayeb.
Here.
Councilmember Jensen.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Montalango.
Here.
Councilmember Moore.
Present.
Councilmember Euler.
Here.
Councilmember Riggenbach.
Here.
And Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Present.
You have a quorum present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. In accordance with Governor Pritzker's Executive Order 2020-69, which limits meetings to the lesser of 25 persons or 25% of the overall room capacity, and Executive Orders 2020-07, 33, 44, and 59, requiring the provision of video, audio, or telephonic access to meetings, as well as the CDC recommending social distancing of at least 6 feet between persons. City Hall has implemented changes and restrictions for the special council meeting on December 15th, 2020, while complying with the Open Meetings Act. The council meeting will be held remotely with members of the council and staff attending via Teams platform. Members of the public and media are invited to watch through the live stream on the City of Peoria's website, YouTube, local television channel 22, or listen through WCBU radio. Submissions for public comment were received through the city clerk's office. The agenda, minutes, and video podcast of the meeting will be available online through the city website. At this time, I'd like everyone to join me and stand for a moment of silent prayer or silent reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, I just wanted to remind the council real quick to please use the chat function on the platform if you need to be recognized or make a motion. Madam Clerk.
Our first item of business is 20-306 and is a communication from the Mayor and Corporation Council with a request to approve the declaration of local state of emergency.
Thank you. I have a motion to approve by Councilmember Riggenbach. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Ruckriegel. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Mayor Artis.
Aye.
Councilmember Ali.
Aye.
Councilmember Sear.
Aye.
Councilmember Grayeb.
Aye.
Councilmember Jensen.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Montalango.
Aye.
Councilmember Moore.
Yes.
Councilmember Euler.
Aye.
Councilmember Riggenbach.
Aye.
And Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Aye.
It passes 10-1 nay. Councilmember Montalango voting nay. Item 20-303 is a communication from the Mayor and City Manager with a request to approve a consent decree with the United States Environmental Protection Agency and the State of Illinois Environmental Protection Agency.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I have a couple comments, but I think I'll defer to the city manager who wants to run through a short slide deck first. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I will apologize in advance if my dogs, who are very excitable this afternoon, start barking. I apologize for that in advance. I'm working from home today. Very quickly, and I just wanted to walk through this quickly and get to the last slide because that's probably the most germane for what we're talking about. This is 14 years in the making. We've been negotiating with the federal government for the last 14 years. To put together an implementation plan to comply with the Federal Clean Water Act. We have been working as a team to do that. We have members of the Public Works team, our consulting team on the call today, and our legal team as well to help you answer any questions that you may have. Just from a history perspective, I think we all know it. Our city was built with combined sewers in the oldest part of town, the 8 square miles of the city. That's the oldest part of the city. Once we created the sanitary district and put the sewage treatment plant in place, we never separated those sewers. When the Clean Water Act was passed in the early 1970s, it became a requirement that we try and move towards eliminating all of our overflows as best we possibly could. We did some work in the late 80s to make that happen and to get that fixed. However, as we were negotiating a new long-term control plan and submitting it, the federal government came back to us and said, and the state government came back and said that we needed to make additional changes to our system. So as we started negotiating with the federal government, we started negotiating with them about possibly building a large second riverfront interceptor pipe, nearly a $500 million capital investment that would run through and along the shoreline along our riverfront. It was a $500 million projected cost, and we started negotiating with them different alternatives, including storage options, including at different spots along the way where we might put storage in place. Then in 2015, the federal government came out with guidance talking about green stormwater infrastructure. They came out with a fact sheet and some guidance that basically encouraged communities to look at green stormwater infrastructure investments. And as we looked at Peoria, we realized that the areas below the bluff, we could certainly provide an investment of green stormwater infrastructure that would infiltrate the rainwater into our sandy soils in the river valley at a faster rate than we would in a cheaper solution than if we were to just simply build a large pipe and transfer and convey the water to the sewage treatment plant. So over the last several years, we have worked, and as this slide here shows you, on various green stormwater pilot projects to show that we could build different projects and infiltrate the water before it got into the sewer systems. And we'll the consent decree as it's laid out really does define that opportunity for us and prescribes the solution that we have negotiated. So this is probably the most key slide in the whole 4-page slide deck that we have. The program would begin in 2022, and we would have 18 years to complete the CSO requirements. We would have 4 milestones that we would have to meet. The first is 2024, where we'd have to have 20% of our CSO volume reduced by that time frame. We're estimating that first 4 years will be about $15 million for the city in terms of our investment, and then about $200,000 annually of additional maintenance costs. By 2027, we'd have to have 35% of our CSO volume reduced. We think that will cost, and estimate that will cost another $16 million, and that our maintenance costs will grow by $600,000. By 2030, we have to have 50% of our CSO volume reduced, and again, another $16 million of investment, looking at now about $1 million of annual operating expenses. And this runs through 2039, as you can see on this chart. It would be $109 million of capital investment, and roughly by the time it was completed, $3.5 million of annual expense to maintain the system. This is in addition to the sanitary district's investments that they'll be making, and they're going to front load their capital investments. They have about $28 million worth of capital investments to make into their system pursuant to the consent decree. That $28 million hopefully will help us to achieve the volume reduction that we need in that first milestone as part of the project as well. Overall, as we've looked at this, we started to, and I think we've mentioned to the council that we have submitted a project plan to the Illinois EPA to finance the first tranche, this first $15 million of investment that we want to make. And what we would be doing is using a revolving loan fund that the state Illinois EPA currently has at a very low and attractive interest rate. And so as we've looked at the first 6 years of the project costs, we've anticipated that the impact for a household would be roughly $5 per year of an increased cost in sewer rates to cover this capital investment. And as we've discussed before, the $109 million would come from increased sewer rates, and then the ongoing average annual operating expenses would come out of the stormwater utility. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I would be happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thanks, Mr. Manager, for the quick review there. And there's a tremendous amount of information on this, and especially for our listening audience that would like more information, they can go to our website and get it. It's hard for me to believe that we're finally at a point where we're going to get this consent decree done. I think from a timing standpoint, to get it done before the end of the year and before a potential, or not a potential, but when a new administration comes in the past, that's usually had some bearings on wherever we are in the negotiation. So the new administration usually means new players in the administration and so on. So by getting this approved now before the new administration takes over, I think we'll keep that from happening. There are a few questions, but let me just, my intention is only to speak once to this, and it really is to just give a few thanks to people that have been involved with this project for all these years. Certainly the manager in Public Works and legal, other members of staff that have been working really hard on this, both here, our trips to DC, Chicago, and elsewhere. Not just this council, but all the past councils that have continued to provide policy direction to the manager and staff, and also to our consultants. When we pivoted a number of years ago to come up with this, really what's 100% green solution, the first in the country, we really felt like we would be setting the new standard for other communities to look at when they're working with the U.S. EPA on how to address their CSO issues. And I think on a number of our visits to Washington, D.C., we actually heard that from the U.S. EPA that this was kind of a whole new ballgame, and it really opened up a lot of new avenues for communities to consider when they were addressing how to remediate the combined sewers. So to all the engineering folks and the consultants that worked to develop this, I think it's going to certainly put Peoria in that position of being the first community in our country who utilized 100% green solution to this, and really set the stage going forward to using green solutions to address these problems. So many thanks, not all just because it was a 100% green solution, but we also went from close to $500 million in cost to our tax-paying constituents down to roughly $110 million. So we achieved a green solution, and we achieved significant savings for our taxpayers. I'd also like to thank, believe it or not, there's outside of the city government, The county board had a lot to do with helping us get to this point. Chairman Andrew Rand was very instrumental in these discussions. The appointment of a new CEO at the sanitary district, Brian Johnson, who helped this discussion tremendously, and also a number of new board members over the years that really took a more comprehensive look at this situation. So I think the chairman and the county board, also the CEO, Brian Johnson, as well as the board members for the sanitary district. This couldn't have gotten done without a lot of hard work. It's still a tough bill to look at on top of everything else that we have going, but I think universally there's no one on the council that wants to be in a position for us to be putting things in the river that have been going in the river for the last 100 years. So I think we can be satisfied to know that we are going to have this problem remediated, and thanks to all those who helped us get to this point. We have a number of questions, and I'm showing Councilman Regenbach first. Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would just echo wholeheartedly your thanks to all those folks, because a 14-year negotiation with the federal government isn't something that comes to resolution lightly, as we all know. So thank you. I also hope that we make sure this is delivered to the public and the taxpayers of Peoria in an appropriate manner. First of all, that this is clearly an unfunded mandate from the EPA, that this is not something that any of us had on our campaign flyers when we ran for office, but it is a project that we can all be proud of, and the fact that it is having a tremendous impact on the Illinois River. So I think it's really important that we make sure that this is relayed to the public and that they appreciate the value of what this project means. Mr. Manager, let me address my question, however, to you. And this 100% green solution is something that we're all very proud of. And the issue, though, I think, is what happens with these milestones if, for instance, at December 31st, 2024, whatever, 2024, we're at 15% reduction instead of the 20%. What kind of repercussions will the city incur?
Well, I think that normally the way that this works, and I'm going to ask Jane Gertis and Greg Myroth, Greg is our consultant from Symbiont, who's been working on this, to jump in if they, based upon the discussions, if I miss anything. The milestones are there to make sure that we're moving down that path. And what the federal government will likely tell us to do is to just simply redouble our efforts to put in more projects and scale up faster so that we can get into compliance. They could potentially say that if we're not meeting those milestones, that they could step in and force us to do certain things. But it's really, the way that we've discussed it with them, it's really more about just scaling up the number of projects that we have and what we could be doing. Jane, did I miss anything with that from your perspective?
No, you summarized it adequately. Just for the council's benefit, this slide that's up here now is a little bit front loaded. So this slide is meant to show you the pace of dollars spent. But if you look at the consent decree, the deadlines for us to prove that we've met these milestones is actually a year down the pike. So we've got a little bit of factor of safety included in here. And there are provisions in the consent decree for us to catch up if we do miss some milestones.
Thank you for that. And if I may just take this one step further, I know we had talked about this previously. but there's not an opportunity for them to revisit this and say, well, you're a grace. We're not going to be spending $110 million and then end up having to put in a gray pipe in addition to this, are we? That's probably the one concern that I've heard. What if this doesn't work?
Well, Councilman, we have pledged to them that we would be putting this together with the intent to, if we need to put in more, we'll have to put in more to meet those milestones. We have a performance-based consent decree that requires us to meet the standards within that consent decree. And if that means that we have to put in more projects, we'll have to put in more projects. That's something that we'll have to do. Our goal is to, within the consent decree, to try and get down to as little as overflows as possible. I think we're allowed, and Jane, feel free to jump in here again, 4 in any given year based upon the traditional year that we've seen over the last 45 years. Is that right? 55 years? So that's what we're allowed based upon it. They understand that you're going to have sometimes a big rainstorm that comes in, but we have a standard that we have to meet, and if that means that we have to scale up more projects, we'll have to scale up more projects.
Great. Again, I'm 110% behind this, and I just want to make sure that as we've been talking about this for 14 years, or councils have been talking about it, that we make sure that the public understands the process that we'll be going through in these next 18 years. And with that being said, I'd be happy to put a motion out there, just to get it out there. So I would move to approve.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. We have a motion to approve. We have more questions, but let's get a second. We have a second by Councilman Euler. Thank you. Next up, we have Councilmember Sear.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, just a couple questions. First one is a general question. Tell me a little bit about how is the U.S. EPA or Illinois EPA raised their money? I'm concerned about the $100,000 fine. Why are they giving us a $100,000 fine, and where's that money going?
Well, Councilman, the reason that we're being fined is that in the eyes of the federal government, the city of Peoria is considered a polluter. We've been violating the Clean Water Act, and that's the reason why we're here. Is that we're discharging sewage into the Illinois River, and they feel that's a requirement that even as a municipal government that is doing everything and taking the steps that we have over the years. Before we did our first round of infrastructure improvements back in the 80s, we were discharging 640 million gallons of sewage into the Illinois River every year. We've cut that down to, I believe, right around 180 million gallons, and we're going to be working towards moving that down to 0. But in the federal government's eyes, they have looked at this and said, you're violating the Clean Water Act, so therefore we're asking for a civil monetary penalty as part of the consent decree. We've negotiated that down to the lowest level, looking at what other communities have had to pay. We feel that this is a very appropriate penalty that we're going to have to pay, and we would recommend that the council adopt this consent decree. Okay,
a few more questions on the slide 4. I heard you say about $109 million for capital costs. Is that correct?
We're in today's dollars. What we're looking at is $109 million of capital expense, which is laid out on that slide 4. So we're looking at staging that over 18 years. So it would be we've got an application in front of the IEPA for $15 million, and then the next tranche we'll be looking at trying to secure 16. Then 16, then 21, and then eventually $41 million.
I understand that, but so we got capital cost, and we got Greater Peoria Sanitary District gonna get hit for $28 million. Tell me or tell us about operation costs. I don't see anywhere. I mean, you and I had that conversation before. How much is it going to cost us for operation?
So if on that same slide 4, the last column shows you what we're estimating to be our annual operating expenses as we move through the milestones. And eventually
that's not what I'm talking about, though, Mr. Manager. For us to do the work, for the city workers, public work department to do the work, I mean, it's got to cost us $20, $25, $30 million just to do the work, correct?
The projects, we're estimating that the first tranche of projects are going to be $15 million to meet the first milestone. So that's what we're estimating in terms of the expense of building those projects. Then
so operations including that then.
The operating expense we're anticipating or projecting out to be about $200,000 annually for the first $15 million worth of projects.
So when you talked earlier about your loan to the state, is this going to be just a first tranche for $15 million, or how much money we got to borrow?
That's correct. It's just we're looking at the first tranche that we're looking at trying to seek the funding for of $15 million so that we can get started with this. And then, as we progress, hopefully we're successful in that first milestone, the first 4 years that we have to implement this, and then we'll go back to the IEPA. As long as the funding sources are there, it's the lowest cost of capital. It's under 2% in terms of the cost to the city compared to if we were to issue bonds for it. So that's the reason why we're pursuing that avenue.
And that's I didn't hear you earlier. So that's going to cost for the first $15 million. Going to cost our constituent $5 per month. You said, or per year?
No, $5 per year, beginning in 2023, and growing through to 2026, about $5 additional each year thereafter, roughly.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, I have Councilmember Ruckriegel next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think, again, although it's been said, I don't think we can say this enough. Thank you to all involved for all of their hard work in bringing this to fruition. What really stood in front of us as a city of an unfunded mandate of $500 million, we are looking at bringing that down to $110 million, which is significant savings. And while that number is still large in front of us, I think it's important to realize what these years of negotiations and hard work have already been able to return back to the taxpayers and the property owners for the city of Peoria. And again, always remember this is an unfunded mandate that was put on in front of us with these stipulations. Mr. Manager, could you please talk about, and while nobody likes to see revenues coming in that might be additional to them, I think one of the things that is different about this, where we are at this project compared to where we were when it was 500 million, is the fact that we also will be talking about local jobs versus something that may have been spent to companies and groups that would have been outside of the area. Can you talk about how local jobs will be affected by what we're talking about with this green solution?
Absolutely. As we look at the green stormwater projects, and as we look at the investment that we'll be making in our neighborhoods, one of the advantages that we looked at as we started to look at this as a potential solution was the fact that instead of us simply putting a pipe in the ground, a large, riverfront interceptor size pipe in the ground, which there are very few American companies, if at all, that could do that work. Most of them are overseas companies that would come in. It would be a 4-year project or 3-year, 5-year project, and they're gone. By doing it this way, by looking at using the solution, what we're able to do is we're able to engage our neighborhoods, talk about the types of green stormwater investments we might want to make, whether that's bioswales, whether that's dry wells, whether that's permeable pavement, and we can look at that solution within each one of the neighborhoods, within each one of the sewer sheds, and we can have that conversation with the neighborhood about the type of investment that we can make. As we're investing it on all the infrastructure we have that's above ground. And that allows us to also get the added benefit as we work through this of improving that infrastructure above ground as well. And I think that by doing that and by scaling that, we're going to be able to also bid that and bid packages of these projects at a level that's going to put people to work in our community. And so there's that multiplier effect that will go into this by allowing us to scope projects and put projects, just as we do right now when we did the pilot project on Adams between Persimmon and Pecan, or when we're looking at the Western Avenue project, and you'll be seeing that bid will be coming back to council at the first meeting in January. That's a project that has a green solution built into it, so we're able to utilize that. And so that has that multiplier effect, which I think we all want to see, is that we're able to employ people locally, see our local tradesmen get to work, and be able to see that happening in our neighborhoods.
So if I'm hearing this correct, and I know we've had a lot of community meetings throughout the years on what this would really mean for the city and talking about the green solution versus the gray solution. But I think from what I'm hearing from you again, and to reiterate this, is by going with this green solution, not only are we investing in our own people and keeping those dollars here locally, which then have an extra added effect to be able to help our local economy, but the investment also happens where if we were putting a pipe just down the middle of the road that would be buried that nobody would see, we actually don't get the benefit on top. We're seeing a benefit to our neighborhoods on the top surface with this green solution that could potentially change the look and feel of some of our neighborhoods that we need the investment in. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct.
Okay. And just one more time, and I think that, you answered this for Councilmember Sear. We are looking at, can you go over, we're looking at $5 a year?
We're anticipating that in 2023, we should see the first rate increase that we'll have to build into this, which would be approximately $5 per household. And then that would grow by approximately $5 per household for the next several years. And as we continue to build this out, it is going to require an increase in sewer rates in order for us to do this. We just can't magically fund $109 million of capital projects, but it will. We're looking at how we can do that in a responsible manner to keep the sewer rates as low as possible in any given year.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for all of your hard work and leadership over the years on being able to bring this to a fruition and to a close. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Councilmember Jensen next.
Thank you, Mayor Ardis. I'd just like to make a few comments since this is such a big, huge undertaking of the city and a project I've been advocating and involved with since the beginning, I guess, well, not 14 years ago, but one of the first executive sessions I attended when I joined the council 7 years ago in 2013, this was the topic that we were discussing. And we were discussing the EPA's proposal for the $500 million, 100% gray big pipe solution. And during that meeting, we started talking, wait a minute, isn't there another way to do this? And that's when we, started talking about looking into doing it in a more sustainable manner, in a green manner. So this is a huge example of innovation. It's actually innovative, creative, and good government at work. So I'd like to thank, the leadership of our former directors of public works, Michael Rogers and Scott Reese, and the city manager for, and all the staff and the council for sticking with it and coming up with this solution. I understand it's a huge amount of money and an undertaking, but it is so much less than what was originally proposed and what we were getting ready to approve 7 years ago. And not only is it environmentally good for our city and our neighborhoods, it's going to create a whole new sector for economic development and job creation. As the mayor and others have pointed out, we'll be the first city in the country to solve this CSO problem with 100% green solution, and I'm proud of that. And it really can be a huge opportunity for us and for the city of Peoria to lead. So I'm glad we're finally here. I support this wholeheartedly. And again, I'd just like to thank the council, the mayor, the city manager, and the staff for your vision and for your perseverance for sticking with this and seeing this through. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Councilman Gray up next.
We will soon begin the largest public works project in the history of our city. And it has not been easy to come to this point over many, many years of litigation. But every previous city council, to the person, stuck together during contentious litigation and insisted that we get the best bang for the buck for our people with a green fix and with head of household union local labor jobs. It hasn't been easy. There was a very large titanic struggle involving this city and its representative and that of the EPA on convincing the EPA that we as a community were up to the challenge to do this and make Peoria one of the greenest cities in the country, maybe second only to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So while we never like to be sued and were pursuant to the Clean Water Act passed under the Nixon administration, I think we're having a successful outcome. And I think we'll have a much better 2021 with this issue behind us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. We have Councilmember Ali next.
Thank you, Mayor Artis. I just want to ditto many of the comments that have already been made and commend you, Mayor Artis, City Manager, and everyone that has been involved in what appears to be the very best possible solution to remediate the CSO problem that we have. I certainly wasn't involved in a lot of this work that's been done over the last 14 or so years, but I'm very pleased to be part of this historical day that adopts this consent decree. I think that this is going to be great for Peoria in terms of our environment, our health, and job opportunities. I do have a question for you, Mr. City Manager. You indicated that the program begins in 2022, and I know that there's been some initial work already, but why do we wait till 2022? Is it a matter of resources?
It is. Thank you for that great question. What we're going to do, we've applied with our pre-application for the funding through the state. We're hoping that by March we should hear that we've got the preliminary approval from the state with regards to our application, and then we'll work with them to formalize that funding package, and then it's going to take them almost another year before that funding would actually become fully available to us. The other aspect is that we're going down is that the federal government has asked us to go forward with this approval right now. They still will run this back to Washington to have a formal signing off on the consent decree after we have signed off on it. Then it has to be filed and lodged in the Federal Register. There's a 30-day comment period, and then it gets filed in federal court. Once it's filed in federal court, it may take another couple of months before the federal judge actually signs off and says that the consent decree is fully effective. So from a timing perspective, as we move this forward, it will take us time to get the from today until we actually get an effective consent decree. It could be another 4 or 5 months. And then we know that we might have another 12 months before we know that we've got the full funding through the state. And it may not be until the spring of 2022 when we can actually start to see the projects go. This actually also affords our staff the time to now engage the community and look at where we want to start with some of the projects and where we want to start that public engagement process.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We have Councilmember Moore next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry I'm coming off of mute and all of that goes with that. I just wanted to add my congratulations to the team that put all of this together. I know our Public Works Department has done a lot of the heavy lifting here. I'm sure they wish, especially Scott, would like to be around to see all of this signed if we go ahead and approve it today, because I remember a lot of headaches and frustration, and Mayor, you and Scott and the city manager taking your trips to Washington, D.C. to beat on some people toward this green solution. So congratulations to all. My question for the city manager, you indicated that there would be a $5 per year increase. Is that on top of the change in sewer rates or until we change the sewer rates?
No, that will come back to you, and you'll be asked to increase the sewer rates to cover the proposed cost increase that we have.
So that would be the $5 a year you referred to, or would it be something more?
No, we're anticipating that the rates will have to increase $5 beginning in 2023, specifically for the CSO.
Okay.
Now, staff has looked at it. We're not sure, based upon other capital projects and other sewer costs that we currently incur. We think that the sewer rates are at a pretty good level with where they are currently. So really, this is just to cover the cost of the CSO is what we're anticipating right now.
Okay. Another question is regarding a community-facing document that can be shared, perhaps even on Comcast Channel 22. What you provide us is fine for our discussion here, but I've learned that folks are very visual, and having this information synthesized in such a way as to be easily received by the community would be of great help. Because I'm sure when this goes forward, once it's reported on, all many will hear is that there's going to be an increase in sewer rates. And so we want to make sure that as clear as we are getting information from you today, in some way there may be some graphic with text that can make sure that it is clear to the community at large. That led me to think that perhaps, I don't know if it's something that a short video can be embedded on Channel 22. Stacy is so good at what she does over there, or maybe this may be an H. Wayne Williams WTVP special, where perhaps some of the areas you mentioned that have already been completed as pilots or first steps in this process, the Voorhees well farm, the Adam Street project. Some of those things can be illustrated because we have been collecting funds that people would like to see where those monies have been going for the extra money that they've been paying. Is that something that is in the realm of possibility?
Absolutely. We've got a lot of information currently out on the web pertaining to not only the CSO, but the stormwater utility, and we'd be happy to continue with the public education and outreach efforts.
Yeah, and you make my point when you say we have a lot of information out on the web. We have a ton of information out there. Somehow we need to make sure that we need to synthesize that into an easily digestible format. I'm not sure how that can be done because that's not my lane, but I'm sure through graphics and illustrations, we can address some of the concerns that I'm hearing from folks about the bills that they're receiving. I'm sure all of you may have received calls and texts from folks who are just now getting their bills for the December. And so every time those go out, we receive a ton of calls. But I just want to make sure that when the community sees this information, they understand the value that this process is bringing to the entire city, not just a specific area. Water runs downhill. You know, we're downhill where we are right now. Well, most of us, some of us are sitting right now. And that's why it needs to be addressed. Thank you, Mr. Manager, and congratulations once again.
Thank you. We have Councilmember Montalango next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too am very happy to see this coming to an end. Very happy to know that this administration was willing to work with us. I know early on, and I've been on the council since 2007, and this discussion's been going on a long time. And gosh, from where we got started, from hearing what the penalties were going to be, the overall potential cost for the city, and I'm just happy we've gone to a palatable amount that we feel like we can accomplish this. I know, for me personally, I've made trips out onto the river to see the overflows or the outflows. Met with Public Works, looked at our drawings, held public meetings myself with my coffee and conversation meetings with my constituents to explain even what the combined sewer overflow problem was or is, and the countless number of hours that we've spent in executive meetings discussing this. So yes, I'm happy to know that we are finally coming to an end here. I did have a couple questions as well. Mr. City Manager, and just kind of following where Councilman Sear was talking about, for example, the $15 million in the very first one, 2024, looking at the high-level capital cost estimate. When we're talking about that number, and I guess all the rest of them, so that's a number that's broke out or includes, and if you would break it out, it includes the labor, material, and I'm sure some kind of administration.
The $15 million includes the design, the public engagement, and the construction, the capital construction. The ongoing maintenance once those projects are built, whether it's cleaning permeable pavement or it's maintaining the bioswales that may be put in place, that cost is in the far right column, which is our annual estimates on what we think the operating and maintenance costs would be included. So if you think of of just as we do a road project where we may engage with a consulting engineer to provide, that phase 1 and phase 2 consulting, that where you're meeting with the community, you're trying to do the design work, we'll be doing that same kind of thing on these types of projects. And then once we get into implementation, you move into that phase 3 of the engineering, where they're doing the construction engineering. They're making sure that as it's being built out, that if there's any field corrections that need to be made, that's being made in the field. And then lastly, once it's built and once it's turned over to the city to maintain, that's when, we'll have that added cost that shows up in that far right column.
Sure. So I was just following that 15 million, 16, 21, and $41 million in each one of those segments. And I was just trying to wrap my mind around how many people would be working on those projects. Where's that money going to be spent at? And I think that as well would be a very important piece for the public to understand that. The last part you mentioned about talking about the projects. Is there a final drawing that shows all the projects that are going to be completed at the very end?
I was muted. There is no listing right now of final projects. Again, this is a performance-based consent decree. And we know that we have significant amounts of public investment and engagement that we're going to need to do. What I can tell you is that this $109 million is going to go in the combined sewer overflow area. So it's within the 8 square miles that we're talking about within our CSO area. So that's where the focus of this investment will be. As we've discussed, the reason we have the stormwater utility is because we know that we have a city that's 50 square miles. And so we have other drainage needs and other stormwater needs that are throughout the rest of the city. And that's where the stormwater utility will come in as we continue to move down the path of implementing the backlog of stormwater projects that we have. So this is we don't have specific projects identified yet. Honestly, we've been really just trying to get to the point where we got the concurrence with the federal government over the performance standards. Because we knew that there would be a significant amount of public engagement that would have to follow.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think one of the critical things is to start putting some of these drawings together to help communicate to the public where their money's going. And once again, it will be, like everybody else pointed out, it'll be mixed with the people working on the projects that live in our community. So. That's all I have. I will be supporting this today. So thank you very much for everybody who's worked on this.
Okay. We have Councilmember Kelly next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add my voice to those of everyone else, or add my thanks to all the folks who had something to do with this, including past councils, including people who are no longer on our city council. This is a tremendous accomplishment, in my opinion, and Peoria will be all the better for it. So, but Mr. Manager, I have a couple of questions as well. First of all, you mentioned the fees that we're going to be charging and going to be increasing over time. To cover, I suspect, the capital investment. Here, first of all, is that right? This is to cover the capital investment.
That the proposed sewer increases are anticipated to cover the capital expense.
Okay, thank you. So as these fees increase, we can do more. Is it your anticipation that in the year 2039 we will have zero lingering debt from this project?
No, I think that even with loans at 1.75%. If you take each one of these individual tranches and run them out at approximately that kind of interest rate, we're still going to have obligations to pay those loans back after that final piece of compliance with the consent decree runs. It will probably have to run, for 10 to 20 years longer than that 2039 date.
Realizing that we are projecting some things where we don't have complete information, what in the year 2039, what kind of debt do you anticipate having from these projects at that time?
Well, all right. So if just by looking at the table, if you're borrowing $15 million in 2024 with roughly 20 years to pay it back, your final payment's going to be in 2034. If you look at 2027 and you've got 20 years to pay that back, that's 2047. So you're just going to have to finance each one of these individual packages as we move forward, knowing that that's an ongoing obligation that you're going to have to carry.
Mr. Manager, what will the fees be covering? I thought the fees were directed toward capital costs.
That is correct. That it's covered. The fees are being increased to cover the cost of the borrowing and the capital investment that we're making. So that's going to be the way that we can keep the rates the lowest for the taxpayer is to run that forward and to project that out over time. We'll be happy to send you kind of an estimate of where we think that those fees, I don't have it here today, are going to look like over the next 18 years, and then as we carry out that debt over the long term. So, and we can get that to the council.
Yeah, let me make sure I get what you're saying here, Mr. Manager. Are you saying that as if all these figures ended up being correct, that at the end of 2039, we would have $109 million worth of debt?
No, because your first $15 million of payments that you have will be falling off by 2044. You're going to have the financing costs that you're going to be carrying out, but it will plateau, and then eventually some of that will drop off as you have your first few years of payments that are being made. We'll put that together for you, and that way you can kind of see where we're anticipating. As we've talked in the past, we know that you just can't magically create $109 million and then assume that that's just something you're going to drop in your plate and be able to spend immediately. So what we've tried to do is break this out into smaller packages that then we could structure the financing to keep the rates at the lowest level over the next foreseeable future, knowing that we have 18 years to comply, and that anytime you finance multi-million-dollar projects like this, it's going to take another 10 to 20 years to finance the rest of that.
Mr. Manager, my question here, I guess I'm being unclear, which isn't unusual for me. My question here is, we've got debt and we've got fees. So the fees, of course, would pay for some of these numbers in that column, and what's remaining that the fees aren't going to cover, we would borrow. Now, I'm correct on that, am I not?
No, the fees, we're borrowing the money. We're borrowing $15 million from the state at a 1.75% interest rate. And then we're going to use the fees to pay that $15 million plus the interest over the next 20 years. And then we're gonna continue to do that again with the next tranche and the next tranche. That's the way that we can keep the rate the lowest. If we were we don't have $15 million in the sewer fund to be able to pay as we go. So that's the reason why we're structuring it this way.
Okay. All right. I'll be very interested in seeing your analysis. The other question I had, Mr. Manager, was I believe that you said concerning the last column, that I believe you said that at the end we'd have an annual operation and maintenance cost of $3.5 million, which and you lost me at that point, because I thought that starting at the top, we were talking cumulative numbers. So the first tranche, it would be 200,000 a year, and then the next tranche would be 600,000 a year, and the next, a million, etc.
Yeah.
If I'm right, that you said 3.5 million on an ongoing basis, where am I mistaken in my assumptions here?
Well, I think what the bottom of the page, it says annual operations and maintenance costs are estimated to be 3% of the capital costs. So 109 million at 3% of that capital cost would be $3.27 million a year. So that's why I just rounded up to say it would be about $3.5 million annually for operations and maintenance when you look at the full $109 million.
Okay, in 2039.
Yes.
What will our total, according to these projections?
Roughly $3.5 million a year.
$3.5 million, not $2 million. We have a $2 million addition, I guess.
It would be a $2 million addition for the final tranche of work that would be done.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I was quite unclear on that point. So we're looking at, okay, $3.5 million. All right, Mr. Manager, I know I've thanked folks, but I really do thank you for leading the charge on this. I think it's wonderful. And Mr. Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any final questions or comments on this issue before we call the question? I'm not seeing any. I do know that we have definitely thanked a whole lot of people here, current and past staff members and consultants and elected officials, but I would like to specifically call out our senior engineer, Jane Gertis, on this. I got to tell you, I learned so much from her over the years, and being in these meetings with US EPA and the Illinois EPA. Jane was second to no one in any of those rooms in terms of the knowledge that she displayed and her ability to comprehend questions and so on. So I know we here at City Hall know the value that Jane brings to the organization, and I definitely want to call her out and thank her for exceptional work over the years. Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Riggenbach and a second by Councilmember Euler to approve the consent decree. I'm seeing no additional discussion, so I'll ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ali.
Aye.
Councilmember Sear.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Jensen.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Montalango.
Aye.
Councilmember Moore.
Yes.
Councilmember Euler.
Aye.
Councilmember Riggenbach.
Aye.
Councilmember Reckriegel.
Aye.
Councilmember Reckriegel.
Aye.
And Mayor Ardis.
Aye.
Passes unanimously 11-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
We would be at citizens' opportunity to address the City Council, and I did not receive any emails for this meeting today. And we do not have an executive session, so we would be at adjournment.
Okay, thank you. I would like to remind the listening audience that information regarding this, the CSO will be on the council website under council meeting information And I do believe that our communications director, Stacy Peterson, will be adding additional information to that as well. Okay, we have no executive session, so move to adjourn by Councilmember Montalango and a second by Councilmember Euler. I'm seeing no discussion. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll to adjourn?
Mayor Ardis?
Aye.
Councilmember Ali?
Aye.
Councilmember Sear?
Aye.
Councilmember Grab?
Aye.
Councilmember Jensen?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
Aye.
Councilmember Montalango?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
Yes.
Councilmember Euler?
Aye.
Councilmember Riggenbach?
Aye.
And Councilmember Ruckriegel?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'd like to thank Joe Deacon and the listening audience at WCBU, as well as the other media outlets for taking in this afternoon's special meeting for us to approve the consent decree with the US EPA. This meeting will now be adjourned. Our regular meeting next week is canceled for the Christmas holiday. So our next official meeting will be the second Tuesday in January. We'd like to wish all of our listeners and taxpayer constituents a very peaceful, safe, and blessed Christmas, and hope everyone stays safe. This meeting is adjourned.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.